by section 2A1, it confines to only specific issues of food grains, that is wheat, rice. It means crop-based protein and is completely de-linked from larger issue of nutritional security. Consequently, the other determinants of food security, health, nutrition, livelihood, jobs, food prices, they are completely de-linked. As a corollary, fuel prices, PDS system, or its willful gutting, havoc of future trade in wheat, pulses, edible oils, more of these they are assumed D. So it's wheat and rice, that is crop-based protein. Now, you ask this particular, the truth is that behind this bill, what the government seeks to do is how to spend less and less on very food security it talks about. Hunger is defined not by how many people suffer from it, but how many the government is willing to feed. Capped on poverty line by the planning commission. Results: there are changes in poverty estimates. All the officially constituted 3 committees, they have given 3 different estimates vis-a-vis the government's own estimates. Tendulkar committee, closest to the ruling elite's worldview, raises estimates of rural poverty to 42% on a weak notion, fragile basis, but still it is higher than the government estimates. BPL expert groups headed by Saxena, 50%. National Commission for Unorganized Enterprises, 77%. The official line here is very simple. Since we cannot afford to feed all the hungry, there must be only as many hungry as we can afford to feed. So, here, since we are discussing this problem, we must take up the oddities of state policy. Giving a damning touch to this issue, one should understand that it is not the shortage of food as stated by Dr. Singh. It is the distribution part which is considerably important. Our cost of procurement, as you stated, is more important. I'll switch from here, I'll leave it here and then come back to it. First I take up now measuring poverty. In textbooks, generally poverty and inequalities, they are discussed together for obvious reasons. They are the product of each other. While the inequality is treated as a relative distribution, poverty is considered always in absolute terms. I won't go into details on this. Insofar as income inequalities are concerned, personal income distribution is one part and the functional distribution of income, that is sectoral income distribution, is second part. We take up this type of analysis for academic purposes. Now comes poverty. It is primarily concerned with the relative income share of various percentile groups within a population to the arguably more significant question of extent and magnitude of poverty in developing countries. We take up it in proportionate terms. Then the extent of poverty is defined as the number of people who are unable to command sufficient resources to satisfy their basic needs. They are expressed in absolute terms also, then in relative terms also, in percentage terms also. It is generally head count index and its derivatives are also used, like total poverty gap, Foster Greer Thorndike Index, HDI Index, or what we call Human Development Index, HPI Human Poverty Index, Sainsbury Mayer, Ahluwalia Henry Welfare Index, and so on. Now, in our case, how we define poverty? We defined it in terms of calorie intake for rural and urban areas. This is the basis. Then this calorie intake is converted into money or income terms. Most of us know, our students also know this. And on this basis, income poor or consumption poor, they are estimated. These estimates were first prepared by Dandegar and Rupp in 70s. But I would like to, for your information here, the first person who wrote on poverty was not, they were not Dandegar and Rupp. It was Trilok Singh, Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission during Nehru era, first wrote about poverty. The book is lying here in the library. All the first prepared systematically, such estimates by Dandegar and Rupp. Many others followed, and conclusive figures were. Planning Commission's contentious Tendulkar Committee report calculated poverty at 1776 calories for per person for urban areas and 1999. They could make it 2000 for rural India. Whereas Medical Council suggests it should be 2400 for rural areas and 100 for urban areas. But then the question is, at what price? The calories are converted into income. No one knows. What about home produced part of consumption? The figure which Planning Commission has reduced from recently from some
30,000 to 20.
It is based on that a part of the consumption which was home produced consumption was not included. Results? This is, yes, good. This is, I am sure about this. Results? Planning Commission may be right in saying that poverty has declined from 37% in 2004 to 30% in 2009-10. The question that arises is not decline of poverty. The question that arises, if we no longer measure the human progress by income alone, why do we continue to measure poverty by using income? Why not use a more stable variable, relatively stable variable, consumption expenditure, as proxy for income? 20 years after UNDP generated this SDA index, which included health and education, UNDP again after 20 years collaborated with Oxford University and came out with multi-dimensional poverty index that has a provision for access to education, health, living standards. That means access to adequate housing, cooking, fuel, toilets, water, electricity, etc. But just as there were skeptics to HDI in 1990s, there were skeptics to MPI too. It's very difficult to calculate information for construct an MPI index. Some academicians who have tried to give a trial to this have come out with the conclusion that if we use MPI index, which is certainly better than HDI index, or by this income poverty relationship, then the figure which stands 37% for the year 2005 comes to 54% for the same. MPI index states 54% people living below the poverty line, and if you use only proportion or our methodology, then it is 37.
2004.
Let me elaborate slightly. If Chairman, can I have some time? No, in general, it is expected that MPI poverty should be greater than the HDI poverty. Too, because MPI involves more welfare coefficients. But it is not so always. It is not so in the case of China, Sri Lanka and Uzbekistan, where MPI poverty is less than the SDI poverty. There are 3 or 4 more countries I could not make out because there was a asterisk on their estimates. Our focus has been always on income poverty line, that corresponds to calorie intake. Although we may have improved with respect to constraints of HDI and MPI. No doubt MPI requires detailed data in a disaggregated form, but it will be fruitful to understand, and it will be fruitful to understand the nature of poverty by pressing into service the MPI index. But data constraint and its interpretation at the national level, at the state level is very difficult exercise which cannot be carried out in a short. Now, in addition to this issue, generally when we go through the text in the textbook, inequality and poverty, they are put side by side together. They need to be revisited. Increasing number of billionaires on the one side, increasing number of the poor on the other side. If in such a situation one thinks that two are not interlinked, it will be very unfortunate. If we dig deep into the inequalities and poverty using a market mechanism and our policy sets prepared and implemented by the state, the political economy of development will invariably point towards bias in policy. The bias may be forward or backward. Neoliberalism, it deserves an explanation with an open mind. Practically, there are 4 areas where state can intervene insofar inequality and poverty is concerned. One is altering or changing the functional distribution of income, sectoral distribution of income, by way of manipulation of relative factor prices. Our students also know that this can be done. Second is mitigating the size distribution by way of changing the ownership and control of productive assets. Land reforms, they are a foregone conclusion. Third is moderating or reducing the size distribution at the upper level by way of progressive taxation. Realizing in, and then the fourth way, using that revenue, moderating the size distribution of income at the lower level. That is spending tax revenue on poor people, food, education and health. This is the last option which is being tried now in most of the developing countries. The first 3, they cannot touch the rich. How can they do it? In the time of US meltdown and thereafter, when this spread to European countries, in that particular year, tax concessions of the order of 5,60,000 crores were given to the industrial sector. 5,60,000 crores. And more than that, they were not withdrawn next year. To date, they stand withdrawn. But when it comes to poor, spending a bit more pinches the state exchequer. Now here, when we are taking up the measures at D level, we should be a bit conscious. Money should reach the needy. It should not serve as disincentive to the poor to build assets. Third, it should not divert people from productively engaged activities to participate in poverty program only. And fourth point, there is going to be resentment by non-poor, hard-working people and taxpayers that look, we are not for all the times to support the consumption of these people, some of whom may turn out to be mutual zones. bill. Now here we should also look into, since the state questions they were discussed, there is a kind of confrontation between state and central government insofar as the food security is concerned, a kind of political quagmire. For 5 years, you said why it was, for 5 years, the bill, food security bill, tossed between National Accounts Committee of Sonia, headed by Sonia Gandhi, and the government of India. National Advisory Committee. Empowered group of ministers, headed by then Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee and Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, also extended their services. When the bill was referred to the Prime Minister's Advisory Council, it became clear at that time that the government was finding it difficult to deliver in an election year the benefits of this bill. The bill was pruned by the Prime Minister's Advisory Council, but they could not turn it out because it was acted on by the NSE chairman. The bill has taken a shape, ordinance has been issued, it is being presented in the, again trying to present in the parliament for ratification. Activists, they are fighting for universal PDS. States and political parties are at loggerheads with the ruling party because bill thrust upon the states three things. One, the responsibility of delivery will be that of the state. Identification of beneficiaries will be carried out by the state. Here we should be very careful. Creation of storage space and storage facilities. This they have to do by meeting half the cost of transportation and decentralized procurement. For this, UPA government needs to take state and political parties on board. But some states, they are already providing subsidized grains at rupees 1, 2 or 3, it's immaterial. Tamil Nadu has a universal PDS system. Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, West Bengal, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, MP, they are also providing subsidized grains. Chhattisgarh has passed a bill that covers 90% of population of the state for cheap grains. BJP wants that this bill should be adopted as model bill by the BJP ruling states. There is opposition to this bill. Tamil Nadu doesn't want to take part in it. Bihar's Nitish Kumar states central government should bear all the cost. West Bengal, Samajwadi Party, they are opposed to this bill. Samajwadi Party, for reasons which you pointed out, because they say it is anti-farmer, it will suppress over time the MSP and would result in withdrawing the subsidies also. That means changing the. Some ministers of the ruling party, they are also not, they have their own reservations. They are of the opinion that this is a mandatory burden. Particularly in a bad monsoon year, this burden will become more severe. Now comes the farmers. Farmers are, this food security bill has no role for farmers or gram panchayats or local bodies in achieving food security. In actual, the edifice of food security is being raised on very weak foundations. Slow growth of agriculture, declining returns, low or stagnating productivity, and the plight of farmers and laborers. The PRIs, public Panchayati Raj institutions, they have become redundant since direct cash transfers are likely to cover subsidy. Now the question which arises, I will now raise these questions. One, impact of provisions of food security will have on minimum support prices and market prices or market surplus. We know that there is hedging by corporate sector against agriculture prices. Would the government not resort to hedging in bad times? Will certainly. In tackling the supply side thrust inflation, resorting to imports may have a suppressing effect on output prices. In such a situation, the natural outcome is that terms of trade they would turn further against agriculture. For a long time, agriculture has fed the subsidized agriculture of Punjab and Haryana, I will call it subsidized, has subsidized the consumption of Indian cultures.
Would you stop also make it clear? Would you like it to be confined to poor only or should it be made a universal?
ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਰਹਿ ਗਿਆ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹੋਗੇ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਟਾਈਮ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੈ ਗਿਆ I can spend 5-10 minutes if you allow me 5 minutes if you allow me. Now the most crucial part of this bill is the identification of weaker sections. There that will come. Identification of poor families is the crucial aspect of the Security Act. The actual design of the poverty census is rather complex and fraught with inconsistencies. I'll again be very brief. When first this questionnaire was prepared for census of poor in 2002, it contained numerous awkward questions. It was later on revised in 2011. The revision was only partial. Because in that questionnaire in 2002, the questions like how many sarees you have, how many meals you ate each day. If you ate one, you are poor. If you have one saree, you are poor. Otherwise, you are not. Now, such illogical questions, they were discarded in the revised questionnaire. One must go through these questionnaires, very interesting. They are available. I pinched it from somebody's table and started reading it. The original questionnaire of 2002 had about 13 questions, each with score of 0 to 4. The total scores ranged from 0 to 52, 0 denoting the most poor. 2011 questionnaires, it has included one category on the recommendations of some economists whose number is 18. They include journalists also, they include political scientists also, they are from JNU also, they are from FA also, they are from other. This is there. Now they have included this category. That is automatic exclusion and automatic inclusion. There can be no objection if you exclude government employees, income tax payers, those who own tractors, Kisan card holders with credit limit. But a person having 1 or 1.5 acres of land, maybe he is sharing 2 wells with someone, but with highly fluctuating income, very large debt burden, being vagaries of weather, drought and flood.
You are still not answered my question. कि ऊपर तक ही रहना चाहिए या सारा
यूनिवर्सल है या
नहीं यूनिवर्सल हो गया है तो बैठे बैठे
होना चाहिए था
होना चाहिए था So see this automatic inclusion and exclusion, these categories are there. Now comes here is answer for you. While minimizing the rural development and related, Ministry of Rural Development and related departments at the state level, they will carry out the identification on the basis of 7 points. The number of recognized poor will be determined by the Planning Commission. Got answer? And also the caps on the number of poor is the prerogative of the planning commission.
It's no longer.
No, it is there. It is there. It is there,
It's the
Sharma ji.
government now.
No, it is not the government. It is there. Punjab government will not decide.
नहीं सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट विल
Central government will decide what planning commission plan. Planning commission represents the central government. कान इधरों ना पड़ा इधरों पड़ लिया और क्या करना? Poverty cap for state may be 40%, 42%, 45%. And the scores may be 4 or 5. If a person has 4 scores, does not enter into the poverty cap defined by the planning commission, then he cannot enter. A person with 4 square in other states cannot enter into the poverty index. Cap is different from state to state. Because 42% cap, if it is for Madhya Pradesh, it cannot be for Punjab. It cannot be for Haryana. So it is partial inclusion. It's not universal PDS. The state-wise cap is utterly unfair. Simplicity and transparency are missing. So many questions.
बहुत सारी बात अभी मार्केट में। Now, since